Thank you very much, Jan Seth, for that very generous introduction, and more so because we are from the same school, so he was rather generous to me. And the second thing is that it's very difficult to speak after such illustrious speakers have spoken before me, because most of what I had to cover has already been covered in some manner by the speakers before me. So I'll very briefly highlight a few aspects of the global scenario because the time is at constraint. It's just about 5 minutes for me. As far as global scenario is concerned, the scope of the problem was explained to us or laid out in front of us very, very clearly and in detail by Kal Navneet. So I cannot add to that. Only thing is that I would like to once again highlight that the civilians are the ones who are the casualties, and most of them are children. So that is something which is worrying, and that's why this focus on mine action and the symposium like this become even important. The other thing is that while we thought the wars are over, but the conflicts are increasing and the areas are increasing. Ukraine war started, Hamas, now in Lebanon. So it's just going on and on. So there's no stoppage to the wars. And because the wars are taking place, therefore, this problem is going to continue and we will have to live with this. And the efforts have to, therefore, increase even more. And because of these conflicts, it becomes difficult to carry out the mine action and demine in those areas. Like, say, for example, Afghanistan, even now sometimes you find violence taking place. So there are few challenges which I wish to highlight. And first one is that the threat remains even now. It's not diminishing. It is in fact increasing, as was brought out earlier. Then there are some geopolitical barriers to carrying out mine action and demining activities. One is the political instability in the countries where this kind of a problem is existing, which actually makes it difficult for the teams like Horizon and all to go and work over there. And also the kind of violence that is taking place in these countries makes it even more difficult for the teams to operate without difficulties. Right? Then, like I said before, that the conflict zones are increasing. So therefore, the effort required is also required. I mean, that effort required is also to go up. Then is something very important is the funding constraints. Now, the scope was laid out. It's huge effort which is required. And where are the funds coming from? Most of the funds are coming from the international donors, from the countries. The countries where the mine action is to be taking place, they are poor countries. They cannot afford to give so much of money. So if I can just give a very rough proportion of the funds, almost 70% comes from international donors or international companies. Just about 30% or maybe a little less or more is from the local areas or the host countries. So that's the kind of a problem. And most of this is, these actions are required to be taking place in the poor countries, like Afghanistan, who cannot afford to spend so much of money on this. Then there are environmental and logistic obstacles to it. Now, what are these? Often these mines have been laid in very difficult areas because we operate, like Indian Army or any other army, we operate in difficult areas to defend our borders. So those areas are very difficult to reach by the people who have to carry out these actions. So terrain challenges are there, and also natural disasters like floods and a whole lot of other things which come. And with the climate change, the deserts in Africa or in Middle East, they become very hot, and so it's so difficult for the teams to operate there. Now, then something which is worrying is that lack of universal commitment. Ambassador Sood had brought out that landmine ban treaty had come. 104 countries have ratified, but major countries haven't ratified it. And they are the ones, in a way, they are the ones who are causing problems. So that is something which is worrisome. A lot of treaties and other things have come into existence, which is something very positive. However, not all have contributed to that. And unless countries like US, China, Russia, or even for that matter India in banning the landmines, pitch in, the problem is not going to diminish. But the international cooperation in last 2 decades or so is encouraging, and like Ambassador Sood was saying, a lot of efforts through UN, through diplomats have been made to carry out mine action and diminish this problem. So I'll not go into those specific actions which have been carried out under UN and otherwise. One of the major successes of the global partnership, if I can highlight, is the actions which were taken, and Horizon was involved in Sri Lanka, is Sri Lanka and Mozambique. Both these countries have been declared mine-free. So that is all because of the efforts of international community, which we should all applaud, and which is in fact very encouraging. Technology. General Harpal had brought out that newer technologies are coming and they are being used to demine the areas. 3D, the drone mapping and things like that. However, what we need to remember is that these niche technologies are very expensive. And because they are expensive, they cannot be used by the poorer countries where the problem exists. So cost becomes a barrier in using these technologies, and so therefore the funding has to obviously go up, right? And so all that remains for me to actually, I'll end on a positive note, because in last 2 or 3 years we have seen increase in the international funding. Right, just a figure which I was reading on the net, almost about the funding went up by about 50%. So today, almost $1 billion have been pledged and are being given for this kind of effort. That is something which is a very encouraging sign. Progress has been made, but much is required to be done, and therefore we must all applaud the efforts being done by Horizon Foundation in this effort, something which is a very noble cause. Thank you very much.